You are it.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. If you do the roll call.
Mr. Fike?
Here.
Mr. Delahunt?
Here.
Mr. Matthews? Dr. Siemens?
Here.
Mr. Peugeot?
Mr. Bijot called in to say he wouldn't be here, so
Correct,
if
yep.
we could, we'll excuse him. But we have 3 of the 5, and we have a quorum. So we have you should have gotten the minutes from the June 17th meeting. What's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we adopt the minutes from the previous meeting.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. This is what they consider an adjudication meeting, so if you're going to be giving testimony, we ask a couple things. One, when we call there's only 2 items on the agenda, but you'll come up here, speak into the microphone, you give us your name, your residence here in Sandusky, and then direct all comments to the board. 2 is you need to be sworn in to give testimony, so if you raise your right hand, repeat after me. I promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. You are all sworn in. Okay. We have 2 items on the hearing. The first one is, if I get to the right one, we have a variance to allow construction of a 6-foot fence in the front side yard for 1030 Sloan Street. The code requires the fence be no more than 4 feet in side yards and 3-foot decorative fences in the front yard. We have the comments from the staff. Is there anything additional you wish to add?
Yeah, I'll run through this real quick if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
So as you mentioned, the variance is for a 6-foot fence on the front and the side yard here at this property at 1030 Sloan Street. It's zoned R140 single-family residential. The surrounding zoning is R140 residential, and then also commercial service across the street. Surrounding uses are all residential. Existing use of the property here at 1030 is residential. So the variance is for the front and side yard only. Based on the code and my interpretation of it, the backyard in this case does not need the variance, but it is a very unique situation, which I'll explain in a second. So the 2 houses here are only several feet from each other. So the applicant has stated that he wants to increase his levels of privacy from his neighbor to the south. So these properties are unique in the fact that they have opposite front and backyards to each other. So the applicant's backyard is the neighbors to the south's front yard and vice versa. So the immediate neighbor to the south at 1034 Sloan has expressed concerns to staff about installing a 6-foot fence on his, it would be his side yard and front yard. And he's specifically mentioning that he would have difficulty having regular maintenance on pieces of the house such as his gutters. And he also mentioned there's an existing easement agreement between the 2 property owners, but I don't have a detailed information on the nature of the easement. And I don't believe that neighbor is able to make it. So there is another neighbor to this property that is here to speak on his behalf. But before that, given the unique circumstances of these 2 properties, staff has no objection to the requested variance. And if the neighbor would like to come up and give a few words, we would welcome that.
Okay. All right, so first I'd like to hear anybody who wishes to speak in favor of this request. If you would like to come up and speak to the microphone. He can come up with you, because you'll be your bodyguard. No, just right here, speaking to the microphone there. Give us your name and then your address.
My name is Salvador Santana, 1030 Sloan Street, Sandusky. I had permission to build a 6-foot fence in my property line, all the way down from east side to the west side. And he's got a 3.5 easement agreement with me. And that's all he's got, because his house is my property.
Okay.
And he's Dante here. He's the one that helped me tear down I had a 4-foot fence, steel fence, that he tore it down for me, him and my son. So that's been a few months ago he tore it down. So I just want to replace it with a 6-foot fence instead of a steel fence.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Dante Hernandez. I reside at 2220 West Monroe Street. Like Mr. Santana said, we're just trying to get a 6-foot privacy fence put up. There was already a 4-foot chain link fence, like he previously stated. The easement, we're not encroaching any further or any less than what was already there. The neighbor stated that he's worried about having to clean his gutters and stuff out like that. He's got gutter guards on there. And Mr. Santana says he hasn't seen him clean his gutters out in years. When you use a gutter guard, you really don't have a whole lot to clean out. There's been some ongoing issues as far as like just some debris and little stuff that's been in his backyard. And the neighbor calls the police and says it's kind of, to us, it's kind of considered harassment. So we want this privacy fence so it basically separates the yards, and that way the gentleman's not just looking out the back of his house into his yard. That's basically all we're trying to do, is just trying to keep the peace. That's pretty much all we're trying to do.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Is there anyone else who wish to speak in favor of this request? Does anyone wish to speak against this request?
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Lovell Jr. I reside at 1014 Sloan Street here in Sandusky. I am speaking on behalf of Mr. Stan Fisher, who could not make this meeting. He resides at 1034 Sloan Street. Some of the items that I'm about to read to you, I have witnessed myself, so I don't want you to think that I'm double talking with Mr. Fisher. The letter that Mr. Fisher has sent in or emailed in. Dear board members, of course it has your name, Mr. Oates. Thank you for the notification of a variance to the zoning code section concerning the construction of a 6-foot privacy fence at 1030 Sloan Street. My property at 1034 Sloan Street is directly next to the property at my property at 1034 Sloan Street is directly next to the property at 1030 Sloan Street owned by Salvador Santana. Currently, there is an easement on this property line which allows me the ability to use the back door and conduct maintenance to my property. A 6-foot fence would make it very difficult for me to clean the gutter helmets on my eaves as well as other required maintenance. But I believe of equal concern is the past practices of this resident. Some I will list now. He has lived here for over 20 years. Since the time he moved in, there has been numerous junk cars, trucks, a motorcycle, and a junk boat. The junk boat sat on a junk trailer with 4 flat tires for so long that it sunk into the ground up to the axle. The code department had to take him to court, forcing him to move it. Recently, the code department has been very good at requiring him to remove various junk items from his backyard. He had firewood stacked up against the previous fence for over 20 years. It just sat there and rotted, causing a problem with mice in the winter and ants in the summer. There was also a discarded mattress he left sitting next to the old fence. It turned into mold and rot. Then it left, and I saw it had been dumped near the railroad tracks on Old Street. after the mattress came, the old sofa. He left it sitting in the backyard next to where he wants to build a privacy fence. It was there for months until it ended up at the same dumping grounds on Old Street. The reason I noticed these items is because I ride my bicycle down Old Street to Venice Road and out to Castelia. These are just a few of the hundreds of things involved in code violations. Vandalism, verbal abuse, obscene gestures, etc. from this neighbor. But because this is a meeting on the variance, I tried to just give you reasons why Santana wants to have a 6-foot privacy fence. It is so he can continue behaving like he can do whatever he likes. He only follows the law when it benefits him. If you want proof of this behavior, please look at the reports from the Sandusky Code Enforcement and the Sandusky Police Department for the last 20 years. I will also include a recent photograph showing the property line where he wants to put the 6-foot privacy fence. I cannot get back to Ohio for at least 2 weeks, or I might have photos of some of the other junked items. In conclusion, I would just add that there is a reason for the code to only allow a 4-foot fence. It is for people like Santana. Please keep it that way. Thank you. Sincerely, Stanley Fisher. Please acknowledge a receipt of my email and a photo. I'm not sure if all the board members have seen this photograph.
Is that it
Oh,
there?
okay, that's it. When he was having his garage floor poured, there were some trees and shrubbery that were in the backyard. He gave the construction company that poured the floor to the garage, which is not completed, the floor, the pad is, to pull up this brush and shrubbery, small trees, and dump it behind 1026 Sloan Street. That is a small substation owned by Ohio Edison. Neighbors that witnessed it called Ohio Edison and complained. Ohio Edison made the statement that that shrubbery will stay there, that they're not going to touch it because of what he did. The police wanted photographs of him committing these kind of acts. He was charged, I believe, not too long ago by the Sandusky Police Department for littering on the street. Mr. Santana has some serious issues. That's why we oppose of this fence. As far as the sofa and the other items that were on Old Street, we also ride bikes, and we witnessed it. We witnessed them loading it up. This was a handful of years ago. We witnessed him and his sons loading it up into the truck. We didn't actually see him dump them, but they were gone for about 5 minutes and came back around the corner with the bed of the truck empty. We did see the items located on Old Street along with Mr. Fisher. As far as the verbal abuse and the gestures, I am truly a witness to that. Anytime a woman is outside with her 7-year-old granddaughter and a man pulls up in a vehicle and flips you off in front of a 7-year-old child, there's some serious issues here. The name calling from SOBs, not only to Mr. Fisher, but me also, the MFs, and the other name of color. So this is why we're against this. That's all, and thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak against the request? If not, we'll turn to the board. Questions, comments?
I have a question to the staff. Do we know anything about the charges or anything that occurred
I
Or
do
they
not.
investigated, or you just don't know about it? We
Just
don't know one way or
Just
another.
not part of our department. I made the staff's recommendations strictly on the zoning code itself.
Okay.
Because all the other code enforcement issues are not part of my report.
This is all on record.
Okay, so let me, I drove down Sloan today, so I'm still a little unsure where I am here. I thought, when I drove down Sloan, it seemed as though I was looking at the last house on the street. The brick home is your friend's home?
Yes.
Okay, okay, now I see where that is. But his drive is on the street behind.
Yes,
Okay.
it's a.
But
small-
he has a Sloan Street address?
Yes,
Okay.
and there's an alleyway, and then,
I saw the alley, I actually went
Right.
down the alley, okay. So the picture that's up now with the chimney, we're talking about the fence being on the other side of that, and that would be running, yeah, leave that there go back where you were. So that fence would go from Sloan all the way back to the alley is what we're talking about, or close to the alley?
That's correct, yep.
Okay. Mr. Santana, do you have any comment about the charges? I'm sorry, Dan, I didn't get your last name, that were leveled. Have you had some violations as far as the trash and boats and everything else that?
No, sir.
No.
Not about the trash. He's lying about the trash behind, how it is, none of them I'm doing.
Okay, you haven't had no violations from the city?
I had to fix my boat, remove my vehicle that I had parked over there. And my boat got new tires, my trailer got new tires and everything got fixed.
So let me ask you about the easement. Is there an easement or is there no easement?
I had, it's an easement now, it is. He's got 3.5 feet easement agreement that I let him have. He didn't have it before. When I moved in there, he didn't have nothing, no easement agreement at all.
Okay, and the easement, can we go to the other picture with the fence?
Do you mind
Sure.
if I ask him to come up here if you're gonna keep asking
Yeah,
questions for
sure.
the record?
Yeah.
Huh? Okay.
Thank you.
So the picket fence that we're looking at in the photo here, so the fence that you want would be a continuation of that picket fence?
It'd be,
Does it go one way or another from that?
it'd be right beside it. And that's gonna be tore down. And the fence gonna
fence
be
would be
right
closer?
beside it.
The fence would be closer to your home?
Should be in, even right property lines that.
Okay, so you know where it is, and you know where you're planning on putting the fence. From where that picket fence is right now, that's, if you drew a line up through between the two houses, is that fence going to be closer to your home in the same location or closer to the neighbor's home?
It should be close to the neighbor's home.
It's going to be closer to his home.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that,
In the easement that you gave him, you said, did you tell me, or did you tell the board that his home already or was encroaching on your property before?
yes, 3.5 feet is, if you look at his house, there's overhang, it's over my property, 3.5 feet.
Does the board know anything about that? Do we know?
I was out there, there are survey pins in on the front and the back. And if you line the front up with the back, it goes right down the edge of the brick house. So the overhang of his house is all on Mr. Santana's property.
Okay.
Yeah, I can
So-
confirm that. I was on site the other day as well, and I can confirm what Mr. Chairman just said.
And if there is, in fact, a 3.5-foot easement, I don't know what the legal easement says or
Right,
what is
right.
required, but I would think that, you know, if he can put the fence wherever he's legally allowed to put it,
Right.
we're approving a variance. To me,
Is this 6
I
feet?
would,
Yeah,
I would say, hey, we want to make sure that that fence is at that easement line, if we're gonna give him 6 feet, it's gotta be the 3.5 feet from the property line, not just, because there was a fence there now that looks like it was like right at his gutter. And I don't
And
think that
that's
was,
where that metal fence was?
yeah, I don't think that was 3.5 feet away. I think it was closer, that was like right under the gutter.
Sorry, just to help you guys clear the things up a little bit. So if you guys are saying, and he's already said that it's 3.5 feet of easement, if we just say we keep it 3.5 feet off the fence, there's no issue. Is that kind of what we're saying? Because if that's what it is, then we'll just make sure we keep it 3.5 feet off his house and run it down. And I believe it's pretty close to that white picket fence, because I was the one that tore down the metal fence
That's
previously.
so they'll give you the 6 feet, right? Unless we approve it.
We need to approve from 4 feet to 6 feet.
Right.
Yes. Now, he can't, I don't know what the variance says, so legally I have no idea what that is, but my assumption is if there is a 3.5-foot variance, that he can't put a fence inside that. He'd have to stay right on that.
Right.
Which would put him just, I didn't measure it, but visually, just outside the gutter. And it sounds like, quite honestly, with all the issues, that a 6-foot fence might be better than a 4-foot fence.
On the other side of the coin, I don't want 6 feet there to just hide trash. I mean, I don't want it to allow.
Well,
it
6
to-
feet or 4 feet, if you want to set trash there, it's going to be there, but,
Right, but
he, having been there and.
I didn't get an
I know,
opportunity. to go there, so
you
I-
were there.
Yeah.
The backyard now is, there's a brand-new concrete pad for a 2-car garage back there. So it's already, I mean, there's nothing else back there but the boat that's now, it's sitting on that pad, which I'm assuming won't be there when they build the garage.
The 6-foot high fence doesn't stop Mr. Fisher from looking in, because his windows are still about 8 foot off the ground. So he still has 2-foot fence if he, or 2 feet at least of him. If he wanted to look into the yard, he'd still be able to.
So with the easement, which puts it about where the picket fence is, the property line is somewhere underneath the eaves at this point, right?
The property line's almost the side of the brick
So
house.
we're saying that if you keep it outside of the easement towards his house, is that what your suggestion might be?
Well, I think he has to. Again, we don't have a copy of the easement, but
Right.
we're just approving a fence where it's allowed to be installed and going, the variance is from 4 feet to 6 feet.
Can we insist that they be outside the easement towards?
To me, and I don't know, it's gonna cost him more money, but to me, I would want a surveyor to go survey the property and provide him with a copy of the survey with the easement showing it, and then marking where that fence can go then, so that we don't,
I would definitely like to see a
Something
better drawing,
marked. Yeah.
a better surveyed drawing, so that we know exactly where this fence is gonna be built before I would want to vote on a variance, personally. I personally would like to table this until I can see exactly where this fence is going to be built.
okay?
So I would make a motion to that effect.
I'll second that motion. And I'm not comfortable with the way things are between the two of you and the height of the fence. So I'd like to know more about where the property lines are until then I would make any kind of a recommendation.
Can you provide a copy of the easement to the city?
Do you have a written copy of that, or is that
Want
just
to
verbal?
look, but back when I went to court, they had somebody surveyed it, and they marked the pins. I was back in, 20 years.
Well, the pins are there, I saw them, so it'd be real easy, put a stake on each pin, pull a string all the way through, and if the easement says they've got to be 3.5 feet off, you measure 3.5 feet off and stick your fence in.
Yeah, that,
I'd like to see that drawing.
Yeah.
okay, so you guys wanted in drawing
Drawing of,
form?
yeah.
Okay.
So I'll second your motion.
So we have a motion and a second to table this to the next meeting, at which time we'd like you to provide a drawing of your property and draw in where the easement is.
Okay. That's not a problem.
Okay. So can you call the roll on the motion, please?
Mr. Fike,
Yes.
Mr. Delahunt,
Yes?
and Dr. Siemens.
Yes.
Okay. That motion is approved.
Okay.
So you'll need to work with staff to get the information that they need for it.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. When will the next meeting be?
Next month, it's the third
The
Thursday.
18th.
November 18th.
November 18th. Thank you so very much.
Same time.
Have a good day.
You do the same.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is, we have a variance to allow the construction of an attached garage with a 3-foot side yard setback on both sides. The permitted allowance for combination of 10 feet. The combination side yard setback for both sides would be 6 feet. The variance would also allow for a 12-foot encroachment to the 27-foot of the required backyard. The backyard would be set back 15 feet, and this is for property at 635 East Market Street. We have the staff's report.
And I'll do another presentation just briefly here. This property is zoned R2F, two-family residential. Surrounding zoning to the north and the south is also two-family residential. To the east is downtown business district, and then to the south, the south is also two-family residential. Surrounding uses, north is residential, east is a parking lot / tennis court. The south is residential, and then the western lot is vacant. Existing use of this lot is residential, and the proposed use is still residential. So the applicant wishes to build a new attached garage to the north side of the home. The property currently doesn't have a garage. The code requires a combined 10 feet offset for both sides of this project, and in this case, it would be a combined of total of 6 feet, so 4-foot encroachment is what they're seeking. So the backyard is a 20-foot setback requirement, and how I got that is the 30% of the length of the parcel is required for the backyard, which is 27 feet. So they're looking for a 12-foot relief, bringing it to a 15-foot setback in the backyard. That is more or less the gist of this one. One note from staff here is that for new buildings in residential districts, private or storage garages or open off-street parking areas are required for all residential types in accordance with the standards set forth in Chapter 1149. So any new build of residential use would require a 2-car garage or a 1-car garage. So staff is recommending approval of this variance. We don't see an issue of bringing a negative impact, given that this is a corner lot. The side yard setback, if this wasn't a corner lot, would have only been 3 feet, so this would be 15 feet away from the property to the north. So staff does recommend approval to the granting of this variance.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this request? If so, please, from the microphone.
My name is Steve May. I'm the one that applied for the variance. The house, I'm with my wife Linda Ott and my sister-in-law Barbara Ott. The house formerly belonged to their mother who passed about 2 months ago. We would like to keep the house in the family. Linda and I would like to move into the house, but we grew up in the suburbs and we can't possibly live without a garage. So I guess that's all we're trying to do. I want to thank you guys for your service. I know this is kind of a thankless job, and I appreciate it. I didn't give you my address. I live in Huron Township, 3119 Jody Avenue in Huron Township, but I also own property at 400 Anderson Street, which is a boathouse. I guess that's it. You guys have any questions, or?
Is your wife or your sister-in-law?
Yeah, you guys want to talk?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
I am Barbot, and I live in Huron Township, excuse me, 410 Riverside Drive. I am trustee of my mom's estate. She has lived at the property for 65 years, and actually 91 years on the same side of the block. And we very much would like to keep it, the homestead, in the family. Steve and Linda have been looking to live in the downtown area for some time. And we're just hoping that this garage would make it possible. They would certainly improve the property. It does border, as a side note, the Maritime Museum property on the north, which I'm very disappointed with how they maintain that. They use it as a storage place since they purchased it, and they have not maintain that property at all. And I know Steve and Linda would do a wonderful job with the property on East Market Street. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
Is there any height issues with this, the height of the garage or anything like that? Or?
Because it's attached, there won't be any height issues. If it was detached, I would have a little more of a concern, but because there is a 15-foot height limit on garages that are detached, but since it's attached, it more or less has to meet the height requirements of the house itself.
No questions.
Okay, motion's ordered.
Did a great job keeping up the property. It's beautiful. I make a motion to accept the variance as requested.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any questions? None, please call the roll.
Mr. Fike?
Yes,
Mr. Delahunt?
Yes.
Dr. Siemens?
Yes.
the variance is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to Sandusky.
Thank you.
Is there any other business? Other than the tabled motion, was there anything for next month?
Yeah, we have two things on the agenda so far, and today's the final day, so add Mr. Santana's to this list here. The next meeting's November 18th. We have an area variance at 2701 Cleveland Road, and then a floodplain variance at 1225 Cedar Point Road, and then Mr. Santana's.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.